If you think about this country, I don't know of any other country in the world that was settled predominantly by people who were coming to practice their faith. They came here because they were not allowed to practice their particular faith in their own country. And so they came here mostly from Europe, and they set up a country that was based on Judeo-Christian principles. When I say Judeo-Christian, the Mosaic laws, 10 Commandments, and the teachings of Jesus Christ, the morals and teachings of Jesus Christ. That's what our founding documents are based upon. It's in our DNA. You know, if you think of other countries like Italy and Greece and China and Turkey and places like that, they've all sort of changed over time. I mean, they've been there for millennia in many cases. And their culture has sort of evolved over time. But not us. We came here and created a blank slate. We birthed a nation from nothing. I mean, there was nothing here. I mean, yes, we have Native Americans, but candidly, that there isn't much Native American culture in American culture. It was born of the people who came here pursuing religious liberty to practice their faith, to live as they ought to live, and have the freedom to do so. Religious liberty. Those are the two bulwarks of America, faith and freedom. I mean, you hear it all the time now, faith and freedom, faith and freedom. But it is what makes America unique in the world.
That was Rick Santorum. He's a former congressperson. He's currently a commentator and contributor to CNN. And I promise you, this is probably one of the most disturbing clips that I've seen in a long time, how he casually dismisses the genocide of Native Americans. I mean, the whole cloth massacre that took place in order for this nation to be birthed. I'm going to get back to that in a second, but I just want to go down a couple of things that he said in this. He said that this country was settled by people to practice their faith. That's a nice, Thanksgiving version of what happened here in the United States and how we were born. But the people practicing their faith also slaughtered millions, tens of millions of Native people. So I don't honestly care about what faith they came to practice when blood is on their hands. He also said that America was founded on Judeo-Christian principles and the teachings of Jesus. Again, I don't care what you profess when this country has had a history of slavery, genocide, wars, mass incarceration, Jim Crow. Like, there's just too many things that are completely antithetical to the teachings of Christ for this to just be thrown out there as a statement of fact. You'll know a tree by the fruit it bears. And America is not bearing Christian fruit. They're not bearing the fruit that Jesus would bear. This is the one that stuck out to me. He said that other countries evolved into their society, but not America. I don't think stating that America has not evolved over the centuries is actually something to brag about, Rick Santorum. It's actually a sad statement to the lack of progress in this country. Other nations are evolving and have evolved. And in fact, America will evolve whether it wants to or not. But still, this is a ridiculous. Then he said that it was a blank slate and that we birthed a nation. And I'm sorry, but particularly as it pertains to the context of what Rick Santorum is saying here, I wouldn't use the phrase birth of a nation. I know he said birth a nation, but it's just too close to birth of a nation, which is the video, that movie that came out that was played in the White House by Woodrow Wilson that dehumanized black people. Just a side note, it's not a big deal. I'm sure he probably wasn't thinking about that, but considering the vantage point from which he's speaking, he really should have considered that. Last but not least, he said, the Native Americans were here, but, not really much. This is of Native America. It influences the culture of America. This is the thing. This is what disturbs me. Can you imagine having to think of descendants of Native Americans and actually think about the descendants of enslaved people, black people who built this country, now having to look at this empire, this country that is heralded as a Christian nation, which is anything but the teachings of Christ, which is heralded as a noble nation, which is heralded as the good guys, when this country is literally built on our bones. I'm sorry. You know, I feel as though the number one problem that we're facing in this country is just the extent to which these people, conservatives, are trying to make this country seem as though it is the paragon of integrity, of moral fortitude and values, when in fact it is anything but that. And what we've seen is the faith in this country. He was at the Young Republicans convention and Young Americans convention, and he was giving this speech, and they constantly have to wrap these speeches in the language of religiosity, when the fact of the matter is that this country has used religion as a bludgeoning tool of oppression and suppression. They always go back, conservatives in this country, Republicans in this country, always go back to state that this country was founded on Christian principles. But show me which principle of Christ says that we should have dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Which principles of Christ says that we should enslave Africans and build this country on their labor, on their free labor, right? Which Jesus principle says that we're going to send the Native Americans on the Trail of Tears, and we're going to conquer their lands, and we're going to infect them with our diseases? Which you keep going back, Rick Santorum, to say, and Republicans and conservatives, that this is a Christian nation, when everything in the history books besides what's coming out of your mouth suggests that it is anything but Christ-like. Anyway, that's Rick Santorum. This is conservatism 2021. Nothing's changed except the fact that we have new faces on the scene still saying the same thing that has been said for generations, which is absolutely untrue. This country was not founded on Christian principles. And even if you think it was, there's a separation of church and state. But more importantly, it was founded very clearly on the blood of Native Americans and on the blood and the labor of Africans, of enslaved people. It's not the paragon of virtue. It's a problematic country that needs to evolve. It needs to evolve away from the white supremacy that built it. It needs to evolve away from all of these things that so easily beset us.